Welcome back to the Green Rush Live. On our last half hour of this Friday episode, we are going to talk about something really exciting, and that is insurance now. I know everyone gets excited about insurance, but this is actually pretty cool. PA, Pennsylvania, actually said they're talking about reimbursing people for their medical cannabis, which I think is awesome because we always talk about how cannabis is a medicinal purpose used for medicinal purposes, and and it costs a lot. I mean, especially in New Jersey where it costs an arm and a leg. And I know I'll tell you a quick story. My mom was actually one of the very first patients in New Jersey at the time. It was this where Curaleaf is. That's why they became really the first dispensary. They bought out a company called Compassionate Science, Compassionate Care, Science Care, and they were the very first little dispensary in New Jersey. And my mom was one of the first 50 patients. She had colon cancer, unfortunately passed away, but that was back in 2016. I had the caregiver card, so I knew all the laws and everything, and I always followed it. So I paid attention. But yeah, so I know how much back then I had spent just on just getting the licenses back then was crazy. I mean, I had to be fingerprinted for the caregiver card. I mean, it was like gun permits are easier to be honest with you. But
Mhm.
um but yeah, to be reimbursed because I understand like people that have terminal illnesses and they're really using cannabis because my mom would never use cannabis prior to this, and she told every doctor it was the only thing that helped her, and that's what really got me started into the industry. Not into it, but got me really making my own extracts and helping people. And then I made the an oil that kind of helps people stop with seizures, and I've done a bunch of other things, and that's how I really got into it. I'd make her food with butter. I was a chef, and I'd see the difference. It was a miracle. I mean, she had a really bad case. It sucked, but it definitely helped her. And she would have a bag of medicine, literally this big, and she would walk around and be like, you know what? I'm just going to stop taking this because this stuff's actually the only thing that helps me. I'm just taking all these medicines, and you can tell the side effects are just one after another. So I've
Mhm.
seen a lot with it, and but yeah, so it would have been nice to be able to get that medical cost back because I know it cost an arm and a leg back then, and I know what it costs for people now, and it definitely helps people. I mean, there's no doubt about it that it helps people going through chemo and other terminal illnesses and just a whole lot of things. And so yeah, it would be nice if we could get reimbursed because it's better than anything pharmaceutical that they can give you, to be honest with you. So how do you feel about that, Josh?
I think it's great. You know, it's I had surgery just over a year ago on my shoulder that I initially screwed up like in high school, and like 25 years later, I'm like, oh, that's what's wrong with it. And so going through that process, the doctors are like, this is where your rotator cuff is screwed up, but your bicep tendon needs to be chopped off, and this is normal, and that's not. And so I'm like, wait, why is the rotator cuff flare normal? And it's like, no matter what you do throughout your life, you're gonna just have a screwed up rotator cuff by the time you're 40. And I was like, oh, that's great, doc, thanks. But it kind of made me think like we all kind of need grease in the wheels to keep us going, right? So it was great when I was, not self-employed, and I could go to a chiropractor and 18 times a year, and I could go get deep tissue massage 18 times a year, and another 18 times for acupuncture. And so now when I want to go, it's like I got to pay a massive deductible or something. I don't even know how much it is, 20 to $100 every time I go in. If if cannabis could be subsidized for me to help grease my wheels and help keep that endocannabinoid system flowing, that would be great, because it would probably make me healthier in a lot of other ways that would reduce the expense to these same insurance companies for diabetes, obesity, and all these other issues that American foods are causing. So depending on the game that they want to play, this would seem to make people healthier. But it almost, I mean, I'm not really optimistic in that terms. I think the FDA and everyone else puts stuff out to kill us. Death and taxes is all they care about. But to stay optimistic, I will say that, this is great to allow people to have cannabis to help themselves. And Jesus, man, like with how expensive everything is, like give us a break already. Like pay for my weed already.
It would be incredible. And I mean, just like the elderly people, I mean, even if they just did it at a certain age, you feel bad. I mean, I feel bad for the elderly people, especially, they're not working, they're all on fixed incomes just about. And and, and most of them, it's crazy, but they started just like cutting people, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of these elderly people are on pharmaceuticals and Oxycontins and painkillers out the wazoo. And then they just started cutting them off. And they're like, here, you can have a medical marijuana card. And they're like, what? And they're like, isn't that bad? And they're like, so then they actually go through the process, get the card, go to the dispensary, have their first initial appointment, and they explain it, but they don't even tell you anything. They tell you like this is a sativa and an indica and a hybrid, and that's basically on your merry way. And then these people get up to the counter, they don't know what they're talking about. They buy something, they got to go home and then try to consume it. And it's like, what? Like nobody had a clue what's going on. But yet it was fine to just hand them pharmaceutical pills and oxycontins and
Yeah.
knowing that they was killing these people. And then now you're going to charge them an arm and a leg to go get cannabis because you cut them off. And like these people are literally withdrawing. So they're like, all right, I guess I'm going to go get weed. I mean, what else am I going to do? And
And
yeah, that was happening all over the state. I know that. It was crazy.
that LNI, Labor and Industries, is a great example too, because this is about work-related injuries eligible for reimbursement, and instead of penalizing people for using cannabis, they're actually incentivizing it. And a friend of mine here in Washington, we're the same age, and he was doing roofing and hurt his back, and they put him on all of these pain medicines. He's gained, I mean, he looks like he's gained 100 pounds, and he's not healthy. He's not doing well. Um, and it's amazing. Like ever since that injury, his life has gone downhill, like really, really bad. He became homeless, all this
Mm.
stuff, had to live out of his car. If they would have just allowed him to medicate the way he wanted to without fear of punishment and losing his job by popping, negative for cannabis, or positive for cannabis, I mean, um, yeah, all that is stupid. So this Pennsylvania court ruling that cannabis costs can be reimbursed comes with this other caveat that work-related injuries are eligible, which is phenomenal to allow for the court system to side with individuals. Because my sister-in-law works for a company to try to get them back to work, and it is not easy, man. But once people get injured, they don't want to go back to work. I mean, they're just
Most
this,
don't.
they want to live the socialist lifestyle and have people paid out. And if that were feasible, great, but it's not. So maybe the alternative is cannabis.
Yeah, no, I have a very close friend that recently he's in the union and he broke his back. He fell off a piece of like scaffolding and there was a pipe actually sticking out of the ground and went right through his back. He's lucky to be alive. And they just jerked him around for 3 months. They wanted him to get a second opinion. They wanted them to get surgery. And then the day before he was going to schedule it, the insurance company called and said, "No, you got to go get a second appointment opinion. Like get over an hour away." So he goes and does that. And then the surgeon's on vacation. So he has to wait like an extra 3 months. So now everything's okayed. And it's the same situation. Like he can't use cannabis because he's in the union. He'll fail a drug test. They'll fire him immediately. But yeah, he's getting all these pain pills, and he's just like, oh my goodness. I just saw him the other day. I stopped by to see him. I feel so bad for the guy. I mean, he's such a hard worker, and that's the thing. He's just they like he goes to the doctors and they treat him like he's a criminal, and I'm like, but he gets it. He's like, because about 8 to 9 out of 10 people they get hurt and they're just never going back to work. It's just it becomes a system, and he actually wants to go back to work. And I'm like, you may never really actually work. He has to get his like hip and his spine fused together, or like something major. I'm like, yeah, it was pretty bad. Like I said, he's lucky to be even alive. But yeah, like just something like that. So now he's pharmaceutical medicines and he can't use cannabis, and it's just a mess. Like I always want to just give him something and help him out, and it's like he can't take anything. So
Well,
it's
what
just
if your cannabis wasn't good? There was an issue a few years ago when Germany sent back the first shipment of cannabis from Canada because Canada irradiates their food, like whether it's meat, vegetables. It's basically goes through a quote unquote microwave radiation, and it kills bacteria. But in Europe, they're like, nah, you could take your radiated cannabis, get out of here. We don't do that in Europe. Um, so now I guess Illinois is proposing a bill for cannabis radiation labeling so that, let me take a step back and just say some vegans don't know that there's bone marrow, blood meal, back guano, all of these issues, not issues, but all of these things that they would normally not consume if they were vegan. They're like, oh, it's just a plant. Yes, but um, so behind the scenes, there are things that are happening like radiated cannabis. So this in Illinois, for example, they're going to amend the Cannabis Regulations and Tax Act, requiring that cannabis infused products at least are treated with a label that they have radiation, um, that they were remediated with irradiation. So that bill would be really nice. I think we all need to know what's not only in our products, but what the hell are they doing with it after the fact?
No, I agree 100% because the ground, well, cannabis when it grows, it just absorbs everything out of the ground. So any kind of heavy metals or toxins or anything, that's going to be in it. So that's for one. So then if you're passing it through radiation the second time after you have all these other toxins in it, I'm sure that's not mixing too well. And then most people consume it by lighting it, so combustion is probably not the best thing for all, like that whole combination. So yeah, it would be nice to know exactly what's on the packaging. And that's why the the industry needs to be federally legal, because they just need to have not guidelines, but just have a set standard, and just so people just have a clue what's going on. I mean, it's just not fair to just like we were talking about the percentages in THC. They're fixed just because the highest number generally sells the most product. And we had labs literally telling us that they have customers trying to pay them more money to fudge the numbers. So we know it happens. And yeah, it's so how can you trust anything? And then at the same time, it's a competitive industry, and then there's not standards all across the board. And we should know what's in this product because again, it's a medicinal purpose. We're used for medicinal purposes, and like I said, a lot of people are combusting it. They use it, which makes it a whole different product. I mean, let's face it, when you take a lighter to something, it becomes something different.
And
And
like you
so
said too, the uptake, because hemp, especially even more than cannabis, will really kind of take out a lot of the heavy metals and any pollutants in the soil. They use it in Chernobyl and everywhere else. So hemp, even especially, needs to really kind of make sure that what's in that and what's being sold in the flower, like if it's grown for biomass, it definitely shouldn't be sold for flour or anything else. But they already allow for crop loss insurance on hemp products, which I think is really interesting. Now that Arkansas growers are suing an insurance after a claim is denied, I guess they wanted crop loss insurance too.
yeah, I guess so. Apparently they had a problem with the chillers weren't set properly, and it was a third party that did it. So I guess their claim got denied, and now they're going after the insurance company. And they figure they have a claim somewheres because it wasn't it wasn't on their end. They didn't make the mistake, so they want to be able to point the finger and go after somebody. And now everybody wants to go, no, we don't want to take responsibility, but they want somebody to take responsibility.
Bro, I
And
got to tell you a story about State Farm. I'm driving 70 miles an hour northbound on I-5, and I got State Farm for insurance, and the wheel falls off my car. Well, first off, I see a wheel fly by me, and I'm like, "Whoa, whose wheel is that?" And then I look in my rear view, and the whole I-5 freeway is like they're way behind me, like 30, 40 yards. And then I'm like, oh shit, that's my wheel. And then I start fishtailing, and then I ended up like getting over to the side and then hit the side of the guardrail, whatever. The insurance company came at me and they're like, bro, we're not covering that. That's your fault that your wheel fell off. I'm like, really? Did I come out and pull that wheel off? How is that my fault? These insurance companies, I had to sue Expedia. You're welcome, HempFest, because HempFest got screwed over by Expedia. And I won because I got an Airbnb, and the fires happened in Eastern Washington. And I was like, I can't go there. freeways shut down, the whole place is on fire. And they're like, yeah, but you knew that could have happened when you got the insurance. I'm like, that's why people get insurance.
Yeah, that's what insurance is
I
for,
sent him to
right?
small claims court and I won. So take that. But I hate
Wow.
insurance companies with the passion. I know it's a necessary evil, but if you can get crop loss insurance and it's legit, great. I just think that this $300,000 claim uh, for in Arkansas for that chiller is going to be interesting with case law down the road and how this kind of evolves when there is legal insurance. It'll just be more of a headache, and you'll have to deal with somebody like Norm Ives, who's a professional cannabis insurance guy, because you don't want to deal with some schmuck out there.
Yeah, no, if they definitely win this case, there's going to be a lot more lawsuits flying around because they're just going to take the playbook and run with it, which is generally what happens.
There's a ton, man. There's a IIPR, you know them. They're publicly traded company, and they do a lot of lease backs. So a lot of these companies, since money can't be lent by banks, they will go to a company like IIPR and give a loan. So they'll buy a place and then immediately go and get a loan from IIPR. So they can continue to operate. And yet we're seeing already some of these lawsuits kind of coming out. You can't file bankruptcy yet. That'll be kind of a normalized situation when we do see those BKs in the US. We're already seeing bankruptcies in Canada.
Canada, yeah.
But at least with some of these lawsuits, it's quote unquote normalizing the industry as we see accountability, people kind of pushing back. And you've got some investors that totally got screwed in the very beginning with these new IPOs coming out and just having to write off billions. Like, I'm not going to name names, man, but there's a couple companies out there that had to write billions of dollars in investment, malinvestment. And so, yeah, you got the second lawsuit filed against Cannabis Real Estate Investment Trust called Innovative Properties because shareholders are accusing them of misleading investors about due diligence on some California-based companies. So, I mean, due diligence is number one, but I've seen it over and over in this
Mm.
industry. It's just not really a thing people do. And then when things go wrong, man, I've been saying it for years on my podcast on the Talking Hedge that lawsuits are going to be the new green rush.
Yeah, they're going to be the big money maker, and they're going to put companies way out because there's going to be lawsuits no matter what. And once one attorney finds that loophole, they're all coming out of the woodwork every which way, and they're all going after everybody. So
Yep.
yeah, that's why this case is kind of interesting because it's going to open the floodgates if it goes through. And
Here's my positive spin, though, and maybe we can end a little bit early on this, which is that as we see these lawsuits progress, you're going to see the MedMens of the world coming to an end, the Cureleafs realizing they can't compete. But as I've mentioned on the show before, the path that they've already laid is going to allow for these mom and pops to ride on the coattails and rise from the ashes as the new wave comes through. We've mentioned in the last segment that we need to get connoisseurs, growers, people that know what they're doing to come out of the woodwork. And I think the infrastructure is built on the back of malinvestment. And so maybe with that, we can do this co-op model or farmers market model or some model that works. And in the end, I think that it's a positive, but we got to go through these hard times in order to get there. All of this normalization and everything, and seeing this crap that nobody wants from MSOs is going to provide these underground growers to kind of have an opportunity to come out and provide us with something that people actually want. So it's going to come with some patience, whatever, but I do think that there's optimism as that phoenix rises from the ashes eventually.
Man, you needed the big money MSOs to kind of pave the way anyway, because it took a lot of money to break through lobbyists, this, that, and everything else. So I mean, they absolutely needed to be in place, but like I said earlier, I think they just scaled out too big, too fast, and didn't realize the logistics of the industry and really the laws and everything, the regulations that were going to hold them back. It wasn't really well thought out business wise. It was just like, well, how fast can we grow and how big? Who can be the biggest is going to win, and it's not always that way.
Mm-hmm.
And
No doubt.
unfortunately, I think companies are going to find out, and there's always ups and downs. I mean, the whole economy is about to hit a rut. So, I mean, of course, the cannabis industry is going to get smoked because it's one of them industries that's, it doesn't have real regulations and real banking and this and that, like we talk about. So, but as you said, there's going to be plenty of opportunity because the dust will settle and something, everybody will rise. So, that will be the time I think that you see incredible products being coming out. I think is the that next wave. I agree 100%.
So as we see this consolidation, cannabis in general will probably be recession proof, although people are going to shift to like bottom shelf, not top shelf. So just like any other sin stock or whatever else, gambling, alcohol, tobacco, cannabis during times of economic trials will become even more popular as people try to just smoke their way into happiness. But it doesn't mean that those cannabis companies that are publicly traded are going to be immune to the absolute collapse of any equity company. Bank of America in 2008 became a 99-cent company from like 30 or $50 or whatever it was. Nobody is going to be immune to Deutsche Bank that has trillions of dollars in derivatives collapses. Nobody's going to be immune to that, but we can all smoke and party when the connoisseurs come out of the ashes eventually. That's the end story for me is that we will get finally that connoisseur cannabis quality that we've all been like craving, but it's not going to be for another couple of years when it's ubiquitous, when it's like everywhere instead of just this trash, this tourist weed that we see at all of the stores.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Is tourist weed. I mean, it really is. And it used to be amazing to go out west to Colorado and dispensary hop. And I say the last few times I've gone, I haven't been impressed with much out there. And and yeah, you're in Seattle, I'm in New Jersey, and it's everywhere's in between. So it's the whole industry all the way across the board. It is. It's just, it's consolidating and then it'll blow up again. It's just the way the
Mhm.
markets work. Everything revolves that way. And that's economics at its finest. And we're about to watch it happen. And it's a new industry, but there will be plenty of opportunity to get in and make a fortune. So
Yeah.
just learn from others' mistakes. That's how you do it. You learn from what mistakes others made and you avoid them mistakes at all costs because they will happen again if you if you try to run a business the same way. And so yeah,
Do you guys
that's my
see?
take.
Do you have a lot of drive-throughs for coffee shops? Like home of Starbucks here, we have a ton of mom and pop like drive-throughs. Like the little shack is just big enough for one barista or whatever. You guys have those?
Nah, ours is more or less a Dunkin' Donuts and
Okay.
or a Starbucks, but there's a couple like little ones, but they're not on every corner. They would
So
probably do much better, but
the whole West
they're
Coast has these, and I think the evolution of the Dunkin' Donuts, the Starbucks, I try to use that analogy of like the mom and pop baristas. You have this teeny little stand. You'll have your local place that I mentioned that people want to go to and get their local cannabis from a local grower, like people go for their brewers. So I just think it's going to evolve in um, a better industry or create a real industry than whatever it is that we call this now. I'm not a fan of what we're living through right now, and I'm eager to see the next evolution, which unfortunately requires a horror story before that love story can rise.
yeah, this is like that stepping stone before it can really take off to the next level. And it just happens to be one of them times where everything's just kind of pulling back. So, of
Mhm.
course, this is going to pull back really good, but it's going to, like we say, we're still going to be here in a few years when everything starts taking off again. So it's going to be good. And
But it's that whole thing with insurance. Like we like insurance, but we hate insurance. You know what I'm saying? It's like the necessary evil of it is kind of the analogy in a nutshell where it's normalizing, it's terrible to have to deal with, but at the same time, who doesn't like discounted cannabis or government subsidized weed? I'm not gonna say no to that.
that would be pretty fun if they would pay for it, but I won't expect anything. I won't look for it. And if it happens, I'll be really, really excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is about 6 o'clock Eastern, which means we're wrapping this up. So until the next time, we are here every Friday, 4 to 6 live for the Green Rush Cannabis Business Podcast. So make sure to hit us up next week or anytime. Visit our YouTube, social media. We're 24/7 online, procannabismedia.com. Hit us up. But for Doug Miller and myself, Josh Kincaid, I think we're out of here. Dan, our invisible elf, says goodbye. Have a great weekend. And till the next week. See you guys. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Heads. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to podconnects.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
I'm Larry Michigan, and I'd like to invite you to join Rob Hunt and me on our weekly podcast, The Deadhead Cannabis Show. Each week, we explore the latest cannabis and jam band news and reminisce with other deadheads and jam band lovers about the great musical acts that we've seen and heard. Check out a new episode every Monday.